Okay, and we are live again. So, a bailout for U.S. shale oil producers, and no, I am not joking. As you can see there on your screen, the Trump administration, according to 4 different sources that were cited in an article by the Washington Post and elsewhere, are already talking about low-interest loans for U.S. shale oil producers. So, we've had this big oil rout. Just earlier this week, Sunday night, on the futures market, I showed a chart with that in the short video yesterday. Oil market has actually rallied a little bit in spite of the announcements coming out from Saudi Arabia and Russia. It looks like Saudi Arabia and Russia are in a real price war here. You have tit for tat with oil production increases. Saudi Arabia is claiming that they can flood the market with an extra 2.6 million barrels per day in oil, that they can get up to 12.3 million barrels per day in oil. A lot of people did not think that that was possible. Russia is firing back that they could increase oil production by an extra 500,000 barrels per day. My friend George Gammon also covered this, that counterintuitively, when oil prices fall, a lot of OPEC countries and countries like Russia historically have not cut production. So while private oil companies in the past, when they were not getting bailouts, would have to cut oil production, it seems that no one wants to cut oil production anymore, and that Trump is serious about bailing out shale oil producers. So let me read this article really quick by Pippa Stevens, came out 3:45 p.m. on CNBC. As oil prices decline and pressure energy companies, President Donald Trump will reportedly likely seek a federal aid package for struggling U.S. producers, the Washington Post reported Tuesday, citing 4 people familiar with the matter. The aid would likely be in the form of low-interest government loans, the Washington Post said. Let me add here that they would be low-interest government loans that could eventually be forgiven. And this may be why you have people like Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway and others making very large investments over the last 5 or 6 months into companies like Occidental Petroleum and others. I think Buffett has put in around $11 billion in debt and equity investment commitments into Occidental Petroleum. And he has a large share warrant position above the warrants are not in the money right now. They're I think around $62 a share or something. So obviously the stock price for Occidental Petroleum, OXY, is down I think 80% or something like that in the last 12 months. So it's down enormously. They did today, I think smartly, they did cut the dividend by 86%, and they cut their 2020 spending bill, how much they were going to spend on CapEx and upgrades and investments. They cut that by 32%. So I think that was very smart by management. I did a audio podcast for Patreon account contributors earlier today showing the case study of a yield trap and how this article writer, very smart guy on Seeking Alpha, he went and bought shares of Occidental Petroleum when it was $26 a share, thinking that he was a genius because they had paid a dividend for many years in a row, focused on dividend increases. And he didn't understand the global macro situation, how oil prices, when Occidental Petroleum was at $26 a share, could go down. So he kept averaging down, and he's lost in just really the last 6 weeks. He's lost over 50%. Now, he's averaged down a little bit, but not very smart. That's catching a falling knife. That's getting suckered by a yield trap. And, clearly he was not aware that Occidental Petroleum could cut their dividend. So now that the bad news is more priced in, the risk reward for companies like that is better. It is still speculative, but the risk reward is better than buying a stock and watching it drop 50% or more in a month or so. Anyways, these companies and all these shale companies have a lot of debt. Oil companies in general, very capital intensive, normally don't generate enormous amounts of free cash flow, very, very capital intensive throughout all parts of the cycle. So debt levels in the oil industry, especially shale, especially the higher cost shale producers, very, very high. Back to the article here. Monday was the energy sector's second worst day on record, as prices slid 24% to more than 4-year lows. There's a CNBC chart, I think in 1991, there was a one-day drop that was larger than that. I have the chart in the Wall Street for Main Street Facebook group. So on Monday's steep slide came after talks between OPEC and its allies deteriorated. On Friday, OPEC ally Russia rejected the additional 1.5 million barrel per day production cut that the 14-member cartel proposed. The current production cuts expire at the end of March, which means that beginning April 1st, nations can pump as much oil as they want. After the unsuccessful talks concluded, OPEC's de facto leader, Saudi Arabia, on Saturday slashed its official oil prices, so they were discounting to oil refiners even more. I think Saudi Arabia is actually trying to hurt Iran too. So not only is Saudi Arabia trying to hurt Iran and Shale, now obviously they have fairly decent relations with the US now, but ultimately they want market share. So they are in a price war with Russia. I was supposed to interview Tracy Schuchart. She's a professional oil trader. She manages money professionally with a family office, I think now, or at least she used to manage money professionally. She's on Twitter at Chigirl, Chigirl. She's been on Macro Voices on Real Vision TV. We've had to reschedule the interview a number of times. She's extremely busy. People ask me in the comment section, why don't you do interviews anymore? Well, the truth is, whenever I try to book interviews with these big name guests, normally like after a bunch of emails, things always end up rescheduled 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and it's extremely frustrating. So behind the scenes, there's just a bunch of rescheduled interviews. People cancel at the last minute or the night before. Sometimes people don't even show up, even if you confirm the interview the night before or hours before, and they still don't show up. They don't respond to emails or phone calls, and then they're embarrassed a couple hours later that they missed the interview. Stuff like that happens all the time, which is why, in general, I don't spend a lot of time booking a lot of interviews anymore. It's just so difficult to book them now. Don't know why. Other channels have more success doing so. Maybe they send out 200 emails per week instead of me sending out a dozen. I don't know. But it's very time consuming booking all these interview guests. Rather spend most of my time making content either behind the paywall or on the free section. Okay, back to this article here. So I am trying to get oil experts on. I may have one on at the end of the week. Again, I don't want to say who because then it could get rescheduled. So I am trying. After the unsuccessful talks concluded, OPEC's de facto leader Saudi Arabia on Saturday slashed its official prices. Saudi Aramco CEO Amir Nasser said on Tuesday that the kingdom plans to supply a record 12.3 million barrels per day in April, well above current production level of 9.7 million barrels per day. In response, Novak said that Russian oil companies may boost output by up to 300,000 barrels per day, according to a report from Reuters, while noting that the country has the ability to increase oil production by as much as 500,000 barrels per day. This potential oversupply comes at a time when oil prices were already moving lower after the Cerveza problem. Probably get demonetized anyway, who cares? Subsequent travel slowdown has led to soft demand for crude. President Trump on Monday sought to play down the plunging price of oil as markets tanked, saying that lower gas prices were good for consumers, except for the consumers that are in Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and some other states and Canada that have a lot of oil jobs. I've been hearing from some of my podcast listeners on Twitter and elsewhere that many thousands of people are already losing their jobs, which could be another major reason why these shale oil company bailouts are already being discussed. Wow, my voice just went there, it cracked. Another major reason why shale companies may need bailouts, and we saw this today with the repo market, with the spikes in repo, could be that Wall Street investment banks and some large hedge funds have bad oil bets. They either have bad oil loans, they have oil shares that are leveraged, they have bad bets in oil derivatives markets. Some of these Wall Street investment banks could have bad shale oil debt, and they could be in trouble there too. So that could be why repo spiked today. We had a very big spike in repo today. We had term repos increase recently a lot. They went from, I think, 20 billion for the size of term repos up to, I think, 45 billion. And then we had an increase now in overnight repos again. So the term repos are back on. The overnight repos are increasing. Term repos are increasing in size again, and they're oversubscribed. I think there was over $200 billion today in repo, and I would be willing to bet that a lot of it is oil related with bad oil debt or oil equity positions that may have been pledged as collateral that are having problems with the counterparties. So it could be a bank connected to bad oil investments, and Trump could have been made aware of the situation. This is just me speculating, but the entire banking system is over leveraged, and there are banks like Wells Fargo that have massive amounts of shale oil loans. Wells Fargo was one of the biggest shale oil loan banks for the large banks. Now there's regional banks that were just specializing in this. So combination of repo, combination of Trump discussing bailouts, things are pretty serious behind the scenes oil related. Could be oil derivatives going bust, but we have Saudi Arabia and Russia threatening to, despite the oil prices having already crashed a lot in the last 12 months, especially in the last couple weeks, we have Saudi Arabia and Russia threatening to increase oil production even more, which would mean to me a lot more bankruptcies for shale oil producers, and why Trump is already talking about bailouts. And again, these bailouts would be targeted in a lot of states where Trump has voters. So this would be politically a good move for him. I mean, the Democrats are going to hate him anyway, so this would be a good move for Trump with his base. Not free market, not capitalist, but good for his voter base. In Texas and Oklahoma. Okay, let me go back to the article, finish it up here. This potential oversupply of oil production from Russia and Saudi Arabia comes at a time when oil prices were already moving lower. President Trump on Monday sought to downplay the plunging oil price as market tanked, saying that lower gas prices were good for consumers. Quote, good for consumer gasoline prices coming down, Trump wrote in one of a series of posts on Twitter. He also said, quote, Saudi Arabia and Russia are arguing over the price and flow of oil. That and the fake news is the reason for the market drop. As prices sank on Monday, the U.S. Department of Energy released a statement saying that the Trump administration was monitoring the situation. Quote, these attempts by state actors to manipulate and shock oil markets reinforce the importance of the role of the United States as a reliable energy supplier to partners and allies around the world, the statement said. Quote, the United States, as the world's largest producer of oil and gas, yet not economically price insensitive and subsidizes a lot of it anyway before this round of bailouts that may or may not occur. Largest producer of oil and gas can and will withstand this volatility. Yeah, not without bailouts. The growth of the unconventional oil and gas industry in the United States has led to a more secure, resilient, and flexible market. End quote. Okay, so I wanted to talk about Putin a little bit. So there's a lot of speeches out there from Putin's, the people under him and him, about ending the dollar, controlling the oil market, these petro-yuan deals that Russia does. Luke Groman on Twitter and in his Macro Voices interviews, he posts these articles and videos all the time. But Tracy Schuchart, Shy Girl, sent me an interesting article link yesterday showing that secretly Russia is having meetings with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin for new economic trade agreements and other investments and deals. So I think what Putin and Russia are really doing is he's playing both sides. I think he's playing China and the U.S. against each other for the better deal. So I think that's what Russia is doing right now. Now, obviously, Russia wants higher oil prices. I also think that Russia, even though they have been trying to make better arrangements with Trump for economic policy, that ultimately I think they do want more market share along with Saudi Arabia, that both Russia and Saudi Arabia with their strategies, they seem to not want shale as part of it. They want to maintain market share. I mean, OPEC is a cartel after all, and the Saudis run the cartel. You would think that they don't want to share market share with U.S. shale oil producers, especially when shale oil producers are getting bailouts and they don't have to produce. A lot of these shale producers don't have to generate profits or free cash flow. So I think Putin is playing both sides, and by both sides, I mean China and the U.S. Because I was not aware until Shy Girl sent me that article yesterday that Steve Mnuchin was having meetings, scheduled to have meetings in the next week or two with higher-ups in the Russian government. Not directly Putin, but I think like one of his underlings about new trade agreements and other things. So it's interesting that Russia, because everyone in the gold community always talks about the petrodollar, always shares these articles and videos and speeches about how Putin's talking about ending the dollar, ending dollar hegemony, ending U.S. hegemony, and then Russia secretly is still negotiating trade deals with the U.S. So I think Putin is playing both sides to get the better deal for Russia. That would be my educated guess from what I've seen from the conflicting things out there. Tracy Schuchart was actually mad that I suggested that Putin wanted to bankrupt U.S. shale, because she sent me the article that, well, why then are they negotiating with Mnuchin then for trade deals, or are they scheduled to? So that would be, I would include that as Putin playing both sides. You know, shockingly, the oil price has rallied a lot today, despite the announcements from Saudi Arabia and Russia. It's very interesting. Maybe it's short covering rally. Maybe it's people shorts taking profits. Very interesting. Maybe it's people buying the dip. Because a lot of the global economy news stories, not too good. Now, the traffic data in China is improving. My friend Jeffrey Landsberg at Commodore Research has been sending me these good email updates on his, well, they're mostly to his paid newsletter list. But I get hooked up. Anyway, the traffic, the amount of traffic in Chinese cities has improved. I think year over year it's actually grown now. So this is the first time in many months since China has had this pervasive problem that the traffic in China has had growth. The car traffic, the auto traffic. Yeah, oil rallies. The headline on oilprice.com, which is the best free research website for the oil market, is oil rallies despite large crude oil build. Interesting. Yeah, big price rally in WTI crude, up 11.21%. Brent crude up 9.81%. So this is very counterintuitive. It's either people buying the dip in oil and oil stocks. It's short covering rally. People are covering their shorts, or people are taking profits on their shorts, or it's people now betting on the bailout with the Trump news that's out there. Better Time asks, why do we buy Saudi oil? The U.S. actually doesn't buy a lot of Saudi oil. China buys a lot of Saudi oil now. The U.S. doesn't buy a lot of Saudi oil anymore. Kyle Bass also did a very interesting interview in yesterday, I believe, on CNBC, talking about how Jared Kushner was sent by the Trump administration all over the Middle East to keep the OPEC countries, the Saudis and other OPEC countries, pumping more oil to keep oil prices low for the U.S. consumer. I found that interesting. Kyle Bass would know, too, because he has contacts inside the Trump administration. He was one of the trade negotiators. Well, one of them, anyway. With Bob Lighthizer and Peter Navarro. Charles said he saw an ad on my last video. That might be, I might not get any of the ad revenue though. It depends if I have the yellow dollar sign. So if YouTube is running ads on my videos, but I have the yellow dollar sign on the video for limited or no ads, then I don't get any of the ad revenues. It's just another game YouTube plays to screw me over and screw over other content creators. Oh yes, definitely smash the like. Oh man, my voice is really going today. Definitely smash the like button. Yamui Mata says, as usual, bail out companies and screw over Main Street. Well, I don't know in this case if Main Street's getting totally screwed over because the American people can't afford higher cost oil. And the other thing is, if oil prices go too low, thousands and thousands of people in Texas and Oklahoma are going to lose their jobs. Companies are already going to start firing, but this could be Trump, like I said, trying to make sure his voter base in Texas and Oklahoma don't lose a lot of their jobs. Pebbleman says, dude, where's my bailout? Yeah, exactly. That's like one of the funniest t-shirts I've seen in a long time. I think they stopped selling it. I've been getting a lot of Patreon account contributor messages about specific gold and silver stocks, so I may do a audio podcast update in the next day or two with a update and summary of some of the companies. Some of the stocks are down a lot. Some of the stocks are down 25% or more from their highs only about a month ago or so. So they're really good deals right now. I mean, at the current gold and silver price, we're at $1,650 an ounce gold, and we're at very low oil prices still. Unless these gold miners are totally mismanaged, or there's a cerveza outbreak near the mines, near one of the mines, or there's big problems at one of the mines, these gold miners should be minting money for the first quarter of 2020. Absolutely minting money. The market is very short-sighted. The baby is getting thrown out with the bathwater here on some of these miners. Alan says shale oil costs $78 a barrel, no profit at 28. Hello, Alan. Permian Basin oil production is the cheapest of any of the shale basins. Occidental Petroleum has very large acreage and enormous shale oil production in the Permian. Chevron and ExxonMobil are both heavily investing in their Permian acreage and their shale oil production growth in the Permian. The Permian has the lowest cost oil production of any shale oil basin. It might be the lowest cost oil production in the U.S. now. It's very low. Eric, what happens? Eric says he got an ad when he tried to watch this video that's on now. Sometimes what happens is YouTube will run the ads for an hour or two, and then as soon as I end the live stream show, they'll scan the word transcripts of the audio, and they'll take a look at the picture to see if the C word was actually mentioned in the article title, and then they'll demonetize it after that. What is the cost? Curious Sand asked, what is the cost of producing in the Permian? The Permian's low 30s, I think. The Permian's low to mid 30s. But a lot of other shale oil producers, it costs them like $50 a barrel. So in other shale areas, it was a much higher production cost. The problem with a lot of these shale companies is they use too much debt. But if Trump is going to give them a low interest loan and then cancel, what I think could happen is Trump could give them a low interest loan and then cancel the loan. So they get a low interest loan, and then the government says, oh, you don't have to pay us back. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Albert says the Trump tax cut will force Powell to increase Treasury cash balance. Did they announce a new tax cut? I didn't see a new tax cut announcement. I know they're talking about it. They're talking about removing the payroll tax temporarily. Alan says when Walmart has gold scales, you'll buy gold. That would be the exact wrong time to buy gold. When everyone is buying it is the wrong time. Was it the right time to buy toilet paper and hand sanitizer and Lysol wipes and Clorox wipes and bleach when everyone else was already buying it? Or should you have bought it 3 or 4 weeks ago like I did? How I was buying the giant things of Purell hand sanitizer 3 weeks ago when they were $1.50 off in the grocery store. You want to buy before the crowd buys. It's better to be a little early. If you try to buy when everyone else is buying, you're going to go to the grocery store, and then they're not going to have any toilet paper. They're not going to have any hand sanitizer. All the Lysol wipes and all the Clorox wipes are all going to be gone. Also, the stock market may also be going up because the dollar, let me look at the dollar. I think the dollar is weak. No, the dollar's rallied today. Dollar is up over 96 at 96.51, up almost 2% today. Yeah, 1.62 change, up 1.7%. Jan says, unless you like to fight other people for toilet paper. No thank you. I don't want to be on like one of those like YouTube videos. No thank you. Ed says they may sell the bailout as a national security necessity, energy independence. You are probably right, Ed. Also a jobs bill. If thousands and thousands of Trump voters in Oklahoma and Texas lose their jobs, that would hurt Trump. Dude, I was kidding about hand sanitizer. My point, though, is you don't want to be trying to buy that stuff when everyone else is already buying it. Okay, well, that's it for this oil show. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you very much to my almost 500 now Patreon account contributors. I've had a bunch of people switch over from PayPal to Patreon. That's fine. It's a lot easier for me to maintain the content with Patreon. It's a good content management system for me. It's easy for me to just make the content and upload it there. And then they handle the rest. So you were probably smart. If you switched over from PayPal to Patreon, you're probably smart because you're getting more value for your money switching over to Patreon right now. Okay, but I should be over 500 Patreon account contributors probably in the next couple months. That would be really great. Keep churning out interesting content. But it looks like a lot of people are starting to bet on the bailout now. Now, a lot of the Democrats are angry because they're anti-energy company, anti-oil company. But even if the U.S. gets rid of oil companies, I mean, that's not going to stop India and China from polluting. It's not going to stop China from building one new coal-fired power plant per week. It's not going to stop China from driving the massive amounts of new cars and driving. I mean, did you see the new policy in the last, couple weeks? The Chinese government ordered all these individual Chinese provinces and cities to start subsidizing new car sales. I mean, come on. So while the West is trying to shame everyone into switching to electric vehicles and not using fossil fuels, I mean, China's ramping things up. So net, it doesn't matter if the U.S. cuts back because China's increasing. Don't tell that to an environmentalist, though. They don't want to hear that. Okay, I'll end my little rant with that.